I'm Major Pauline Cushman. I was a spy for the Union during the Civil War. I was born June 10th, 1833, New Orleans, Louisiana. I had 7 brothers. I was the only girl. Imagine that, having 7 brothers, growing up with them. My father, who was a merchant, moved us to Grand Rapids, Michigan when I was about 10 years old. He opened up a trading post for the locals as well as the local Chippewa tribe, where I befriended quite a few of them as well. See, my mother wasn't very into much of the domesticated, so I learned a lot from the mothers and the grandmothers. I also learned a lot with interacting with the Chippewa boys. Between them and my brothers, they taught me how to hunt, how to fish, how to ride a horse, and not side saddle, mind you. They also taught me how to shoot a gun. I had wonderful times with them during my childhood. In fact, I even had a name with the Chippewa tribe called Laughing Breeze. Well, although around those parts, it was kind of boring. And I started to hear stories from a big city called New York. We had done a lot of little plays, my brothers, myself, and a lot of the youngsters from the Chippewa tribe. So I thought maybe I should give acting a try when I get a little older. So when I was 18 years old, I decided to embark on my own, which my parents were very much against, and so were my aunt and uncle. I decided to take off on my own to New York City, the big city. I wanted to be an actress. I went out there. I put my best effort in. Now, Major Pauline Cushman is not my birth name. It's actually Harriet Wood. When I got to New York, I thought that just wasn't a great name to try as an actress, Harriet Wood. So what did I do? I fashioned me a new name. There was a very famous actress at the time called Charlotte Cushman. I therefore gave myself the name of Pauline Cushman. So I tried it out there, and I wasn't finding a lot of work. Then, over some time, I went down south. I went back to Louisiana, and I found my stardom as an actress, which continued for quite a while. I appeared in many shows. I met my first husband, Charles Dickinson, while doing a show. He was a musician. He was very handsome. He was from Cleveland, Ohio. So I got married to him. We ended up having 2 children, Charles and Ida. Charles Jr., I should say, of course, little Charles. Well, when the war broke out in 1861, Charles wanted to do his duty. He wanted to serve his country. Him and I had quite a dispute about it. What was I going to do with 2 young children at home? What was I going to do? So what did I do? I decided to support my husband, and he enlisted in an Ohio regiment as a musician. In 1862, that fall, Charles got sick. Some say it was dysentery. I know he came home and he was not doing very well. A couple months later, I could not stay with him. We had a small place. So he was staying at his parents' house, and I'd visit him every single day. So unfortunately, in December of 1862, Charles is going to pass away. Now, there are some stories that it was from his illness that he got in the war. There's even a story that goes around about how it was from blunt force trauma after a meeting with me. Well, it was the illness, trust me. What was I to do? I had 2 small children, and now I was a widow. I had thought about serving my country. There were many women that wanted to do something for the war effort, not just those boys. It was very, very, very tough to think about my children and what the next step was. I decided to go back to Acton to try to support my children. I left them with my in-laws. Now, some people may say that I abandoned my children. I did not. I just could not take care of them the way I wanted to. So I left them with my in-laws and I embarked back on Acton, which is what I did. I did a lot of Acton down south. I got to know a lot of Confederates, a lot of Confederate sympathizers. Now, I'm from New Orleans. They had asked Pauline, what do you feel about the war? I said, well, I actually have a couple brothers that serve in the Confederacy. I just wish them well. I hope to see them again, I said. So that's what I did. I went back to Acton, and it was in the spring of 1863. I was doing a show called The Seven Sisters down in Louisville, Kentucky. And I had been sharing a lot of friendship with different folks down there. A couple of them were Confederates. See, Kentucky was a split state. Some of them wanted to join the Union. Some of them wanted to join the South. So what did I do? I just want everybody to be safe. I didn't really publicly pick a side. So one evening, I'm doing this program with the Seven Sisters. Now, the thing is that all the boys were off fighting, so many of us women played male roles as well in a lot of these plays. That's what we could do. And a lot of what I learned in my youth and also the time in Acton is going to help me in just a little bit here. I do the play. A couple of my Confederate friends say, Pauline, we really need to get people and use your star power to get people on our side. We're going to offer you $300 to toast Jefferson Davis at the end of your show. Will you do it? I said, $300 is a lot of money. I could send that home to my children. I didn't really know what to do. I went to the local provost marshal. He said, let me think on it, Pauline. And he did. He said, Pauline, I want you to do it. I want you to help us round up who all these Confederate sympathizers and Confederates are here. I said, absolutely, Colonel. I can help you with that. So I said, do I get to keep the money at least? And he said, well, yeah, Pauline, you can keep the money. I said, okay, I keep the money. I went, and I did that toast at the end of the show. I toasted the great Jefferson Davis, President of the Confederacy. Oh my goodness, you would not believe the chaos that erupted. People started fighting in the aisles. Some were booing me, some were cheering me, some were arguing with people sitting next to them. It just created such the scene. Well, I ended up backing away, and before I even got to my dressing room, I lost my job. I was fired by the manager of the theater. So now I'm out of job. I was then called to go visit with Colonel Moore again. And he said, Pauline, how would you like to serve your country? And I said, how do you mean, sir? You would be perfect to help get us information, a little espionage. How about being a spy for us? You're an actress. You can play the role. You can get dressed up as a soldier and get into the camps that way. Or you can also, being you charm the Southern gentleman, you can also use that method as well. And I said, well, may I think about it, sir, because this is quite dangerous. And he said, of course. So I thought about it, and I said, well, I want to serve my country. I decided to do it. So therefore, I enlisted in becoming a spy for the Union throughout the spring and the summer of 1863. I found that it was easy for me as an actress to use my skills and also what I had learned back in the day about riding horses and getting dressed up as a Confederate boy in the ranks. I found it pretty not as hard as I thought it would be. There was a time I stayed at a boarding house, and the woman who ran it was about to poison some Union boys that were staying there. I caught wind of it because she discussed it with me, because I said that I was definitely pro-South and I was looking for my missing brothers. She trusted me. I gained her trust. What did she do? She told me her whole plan about poisoning the Union boys that came and stayed with her. Well, I ended up getting her arrested. There was also a time that I would just go to camps to gain information, to say I'm looking for my lost brother. And I have come to find that no matter the side of the gentleman, if you give them a little attention, maybe some food and drink, well, mouths will open with all kinds of information. And I have a very, very good memory. They always told me never to take anything, Pauline, never ever take anything. Anything you find, any battle plans, any information you get, always commit it to your memory. And I said, I can do that. So that's what I did. See, I'm not somebody who likes going to tea parties and such. I developed a like for whiskey from the time I was a teenager that the Chippewa boys introduced me to. So I would usually spend time with the gentlemen soldiers, playing cards, and drinking whiskey. I was one of the boys, which they liked, and they felt very comfortable around me where they could share this information. I did this for quite a while that summer. I ended up in Shelbyville, Tennessee. I was working for General Rosecrans. He was trying to get information on a gentleman by the name of General Braxton Bragg. He wanted me to go in to find out what their force was, how many they had, what they were planning. I said, I can do that. So, once again, I decided to be that innocent Southern woman that was going in to try to find her lost brothers. It had worked so well for me many times in the past. Well, I made my way into General Bragg's camp and his headquarters. See, there was a really good friend of mine that I developed a friendship with. I was actually captured a couple times by him. His name, as a Confederate cavalryman, is General John Hunn Morgan. Well, I don't know, maybe he just didn't want to keep me after he captured me after talking to me, but I managed to escape. They really didn't have a lot of security on me, so after escaping twice, he said, Pauline, I understand that you're working for the Union, but we can be friends. So he actually wanted me to switch sides and offered me a position on his staff, which I politely declined. So here I am down in Shelbyville, Tennessee, talking with a lot of the Confederate officers that I already knew. I made my way into Bragg's headquarters. Around that headquarters, there were some maps and there was some information on troop movements, and it looked very important to me. I said, well, what should I do? Should I try to commit this all to memory? I don't have a lot of time. Or do I take these items? And then in the back of my mind, that was that order of not to do that. But some may tell you sometimes I don't always have the best deportment and I don't like rules. So I ended up taking them, actually. I took those plans and put them into my boot. I was looking for my lost brother. They bought the story. No, he's not around here. Well, that's fine then. I went to leave. Made it through a couple checkpoints. However, I didn't make it through the last one. They suspected me of maybe being up to something I shouldn't have been. So they ended up searching me, and in my boot, they found those plans. What I was told not to take got me in a lot of trouble. First, they brought me to a cavalryman named General Nathan Bedford Forrest. I had heard about him. And he had said, "Why, Ms. Cushman, I know who you are. Unfortunately, Ms. Cushman, I do think you are a spy. And what do we do with spies but we hang them? I can't wait to hear your neck snap at the end of a rope." And I said, "Oh, that is so ungentlemanly of you there, General Forrest." I said, "Now when they searched me, they also found, because I carried a Colt revolver. When he found that, they took it away from me." And I had said, "Well, General Forrest, I cannot believe you're making such an accusation on such an innocent woman of being here. I'm just looking for my brother." He continued not to buy that story. And he says, "You're going to hang at the end of a noose." And I said, "Well, sir, all I can say there, General, is if I did have my revolver, I would shoot you with it." So yes, I did threaten Nathan Bedford Forrest. Then I got brought to General Braxton Bragg himself. I did try once again my story, and it just wasn't being believed. "You have been caught with items, Ms. Cushman." He brought me up on charges. He decided that he wanted to put me on a full military trial, which happened. And yes, I was convicted of being a spy, so I was sentenced to hang. I knew that General Rosecrans and the boys were coming. I was awaiting my fate. I was scared. I tried my best to serve my country and my loyalty to the Union. Then I got sick. And the funny thing is that they wouldn't hang me while I was sick. I had to get better. So I used a little bit of my acting skills and maybe made it seem that I wasn't as sick as I truly was. I really played it well for the doctors. They kept telling General Bragg that she's very ill. What happens? Days go by. Time goes by, and I'm still sick. General Rosecrans is now coming with the Union boys. General Braxton Bragg's going to hightail it out of there. Well, I convinced the doctors that I was not well enough to travel, so they left me behind. So that is how I escaped Braxton Bragg's noose. General Rosecrans saved me. He's a good friend of mine. So was a gentleman by the name of General James Garfield. He went on to be president. Well, I recovered for some after my illness, and General Garfield, well, he recommended me for a major's rank in the Union Army for my service. And President Lincoln agreed. So that is how I became Major Pauline Cushman. So what am I going to do now? I'm a spy that has been outed. How am I going to support myself, support my family? I decided to start doing lectures and programs all around, telling my story of my espionage and how I escaped the noose of Braxton Bragg. That's what I did. I made a lot of money. Unfortunately, both my children, they never made it out of childhood. They both died, unfortunately. I do miss them, indeed. So for quite a time, I did a lot of these programs where I was telling my tales and people just they couldn't wait to hear it. I was quite the celebrity. I actually also worked for P.T. Barnum down in New York City as well. As the years passed, though, the nation wanted to heal. They weren't so much interested in hearing all these war stories anymore. They wanted to move forward. So after a few years, I decided and went out west. That is where I met my second husband, August Fincher. He only lived a year, and that's all I really can say about that. I ended up out in Arizona, where I met my third husband, Jeremiah Fryer. He ended up being the sheriff of Pinal County. I ran a lot of businesses with him. One of them was a saloon. One evening, there was a gentleman that came in very, very drunk. And I had said to him, "I cannot give you any more drinks, sir." I said, "You've had enough." And he got very not so nice with me. I asked him to leave my establishment, and he said no. I said, "Okay." I said, I reached underneath the bar counter and pulled out my service revolver from my Army days. And I did threaten him that he had about 3 seconds to leave the premises, and he actually did. Some people ask me if I would have shot him. Maybe I would have, maybe I wouldn't have. That's something that you just don't know now, do you? Also, while I was out there, there was a gentleman that was being very mean to his horses. And he was whipping them. And then he was being very mean to some women as well that was by his carriage. And I said, this cannot happen in my town. So I went up to him and I asked him to stop. And he laughed at me and he threatened me. Well, I grabbed his whip and I used it on him. See, I'm not afraid of any woman or any man. Jeremiah and I had an adopted daughter, Emma. Unfortunately, she got sick. She's going to die at the age of 18. Jeremiah was also an alcoholic and had a wandering eye. He was also very abusive towards me. I just decided to leave one day. I'd had enough, and that's what I did. I went back to acting, tried some of that. It wasn't nearly as successful as the last time as I was older. So I would take different jobs, sewing, cleaning, anything that I could do. I felt that people had forgotten about me and my service. Again, I mentioned that I did have a little problem with whiskey a long time. Well, I still did. And then I had rheumatoid arthritis come on to me. Very, very painful indeed. And I was taking a lot of painkillers for that too. I ended up out in San Francisco towards the end of my life. I was renting a room out in a boarding house, trying to make money any way that I could. My days of glory of the Union Army are definitely past me at this point. But it was very painful every day. I actually had planned to return to the South and to also visit some folks in Texas. I had a couple trunks of my things actually sent ahead of time in late November of 1893. Well, I was taking the painkillers, and also I was drinking the whiskey with them too. On December the 2nd, 1893, I took a little too much. And unfortunately, that is where I thought my story had ended. I died at the age of 60 years old. And the way I understand it, a lot of people didn't know if it was on purpose that I did it, because I was in so much pain and I felt that I was just left behind. I lived a very painful life. There was all the other heroics, of course, of the war, but there was also a lot of pain as well. And then some people thought it was not on purpose, that it was just an overdose. Well, come to find out, after a couple autopsies, that is true. It was an accidental overdose. I was buried at first in a very pauper grave. And then some folks found out who I was with the local GAR. Well, then they decided to give me the send-off that I deserved. I was then buried in the Soldiers' Circle of the Presidio Soldiers' Cemetery with full military honors. And that is where I still rest to this day. So if you are ever in San Francisco, please do stop by and pay your respects to Union spy, Major Pauline Cushman.